everyone. My name is Nelson. I'm the Aquarium and Life Support Manager here at the San Antonio Zoo. This is actually my third Facebook live chat. I've been enjoying these so much. I hope you guys are too. Today's going to be a little bit different than the typical chats. A lot of them have been animal-based, but I want to take the opportunity to talk about some of our behind-the-scenes things, like our filtration, especially for hippo life support. When you guys come to the zoo, when you guys are enjoying our hippos, a lot of the time our water is crystal clear blue, and it takes a lot of work to get the water to be that clear. Timothy doesn't always make it so easy for me because he tends to kick up a lot of the debris on the bottom, but we manage. All right, so we're going to take a quick walk, and we're going to go to our life support area. This is an area that most people do not get to see. Over here we have our skimmer. So a lot of that debris that's floating on top of the water, old leaves, grass, organic waste, all that kind of worked its way down into this system. Gets sucked in through the main intake over here, and over there is an emergency overflow. So if the water gets too high, instead of flooding the exhibit, all that will go down the waistline. All right, we're going to continue walking over this way. Honestly, this part always makes me feel like I'm in Jurassic Park. And there's Timothy and Uma. People want to say hi? He's a good boy. So it can get a little loud in the life support area, so I'm going to try my best to keep a clear voice. So this is the main part of our filtration if you want to step right this way. As you can see, a lot of our water from our exhibit is coming this way, and it's going into the stainless steel tub over here. So a lot of that organic waste is being collected and being filtered out by this drum over here. So this drum is actually picking up our waste and throwing it down this chute, and the organic waste goes down the waistline over there. So a lot of the times we deal with a lot of blockages. So right now this is Chris. He is our lead water technician. Chris is responsible for a lot of the water around the zoo. So when you guys are going to Flamingo Lagoon, Giraffe Waterfall, Rhino Waterfall, Hippo Life Support, it's because of Chris's hard work where that water's always pristine.
Thanks for joining us today.
So once the solids get pulled from this water, the water joins in the sump over here. So now all the big organic debris is being sifted out. It's being picked up by our motor. It's being carried over. These are 12-inch PVC pipes, some of the largest diameter pipe I've ever worked with. It's following its path this way and going to all 4 of our sand filters. Let's take a look at these so you guys get an idea how big these guys are. These sand filters. These things are absolutely massive, and they take care of a lot of our water. Just like our normal sand filters, they're filled about this high with sand. As the water comes through, it has to work its way through that sand, get collected in the laterals, and it rejoins our system that way. We do have to backwash these every day. We keep a log on how many times these things get backwashed every day. We do about 4 a day. And this is our controller. So right now Chris did a backwash on sand filter 2. I think we're done, so we can actually perform a backwash on number 3.
Andrea would like to know how many gallons we clean a day.
That I'm not sure. That exhibits over 100,000 gallons. And you can imagine that this system is pushing that water about 10 times every hour. So times that by the hours in the day, that'll pretty much give you a solid answer. But that's pretty much the typical flow rate we want in our aquariums, is we want 10 times the amount of volume in the tanks. Need to go through our filtration.
Allison's asking when they get emptied. I'm not sure if she means the exhibit or the sand filters.
The sand filters, we have to observe them through these portholes. Every year we'll undo these bolts, and we'll take out this bulkhead. We'll take a look in there. If the sand is still light and fluffy, it's good. There's a time where the sand will actually start to become concrete. It'll become so. Right now you can actually hear the sand filter pressurizing, because I'm going through a backwash cycle. But yeah, once the sand becomes too dense for the water to flow through, it's time to take the sand filter offline, take off the port, and get all the sand out of it and repack it. But that's done every few years. We haven't had to do that yet, luckily. All right, sorry about that, folks. But yeah, it's a really impressive system. A lot of it's automated. It'll turn these actuators, and there's a little wafer in there, a little disc, and it'll actually close or open depending on where you want the water to go. So there is a special water supply that gets diverted from the main system, so it comes off of the sand filters after it's been cleaned and polished. And it goes through these heat exchangers. Let's take a walk right over here. Chris taught me all about these. I didn't know a single thing about heat exchangers when I started here, but Chris has been amazing. So right now the water's actually coming in, and it's actually crisscrossing. So good. So it's taking the exhibit water and it's taking heated water from our boiler, and it's crisscrossing them. So it's exchanging the heat. That's what we call a heat exchanger. So it's taking the hot water, that's about 210 degrees, and it's mixing it with our exhibit water, and it's actually taking the heat away from the boiler water. So then it's putting the warm exhibit water back into the exhibit. The cooled now boiler water actually goes back to the boiler, gets reheated, and then gets sent back to the heat exchangers. And right now we're running at 78, and Hippo Life supports at 82. That's pretty much the warmest we want to run those bodies of water. But it takes a lot of work. In life support, if one part of the system goes down, there is a cascading effect. So if my drum gets clogged, I'm not able to push water to my sand filters. If my sand filters aren't working, I can't push water to the heat. And if I can't get water to my ozone unit, then our filtration system goes down. So we try our best to keep everything running. Let's go take a walk over here. So this is kind of loud, so I'm going to actually shut down some of our pumps. Well, first let me shut down ozone. So I'm shutting down ozone. And I'm shutting down our 2 pumps. And we should be good to go. So this is our ozone generator. This is a form of chemical filtration. And this stuff is actually really cool. And I'm going to show you step by step what's actually happening when I say ozone. I have a very simplified chart of ozone production. So what's happening here is that we're taking our pure oxygen. Let's open this up. These 2 right here are oxygen concentrators. In the atmosphere, the air that you're currently breathing, there's about 21% oxygen, about 78% nitrogen, and then the rest of the gases, other gases that aren't really important to our process of making ozone. But we want to put oxygen through our plasma block. So this is actually concentrating it down. These right here are called sieve beds. There's a ceramic media in here, and it absorbs moisture, it absorbs nitrogen, but it allows oxygen to flow freely through. So these actually go through a purge. So one of these canisters will actually pressurize fully and reject the nitrogen, and then the oxygen will flow through our flow meters into our plasma blocks. These are our ozone generators. If you want to take a peek in there, don't get too close. But in there is the plasma block. Inside that stainless steel body, there's a ceramic plate, and there's a little stainless steel coil. So as the oxygen, our 100% oxygen, goes over that coil, this is this step right here, we're passing an electrical current through the oxygen. It's actually going to separate those 2 atoms. Now, I have separated oxygen, but it doesn't want to be separated. It wants to find its friends. So it's going to start clumping together, and it's going to form a new bond called O3, ozone. So it's going to be O3 and O4. Now, this is a very unstable bond. It can't last forever. So what's going to happen is, now we have our ozone gas is flowing through our system, and it goes to our contact tanks. This ozone wants to go back to being oxygen, so it's going to start trying to pull itself apart. As it's pulling itself apart, any organic matter, viruses, bacteria, pathogens, they're also going to start to fall apart. If I can make a quick spoiler reference to the Avengers, Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good. They're actually dissolving. They're falling apart. I told my guys I was going to do that, and I kept my word. So all that organic matter is being broken apart, and then it's being pumped back into the system. So it's actually traveling to these biotowers. It's trickling down through our biomedia and going back to exhibit. So this water is super clean at this point. I'm going to come back to this in a second. I got one more part of ozone to talk about. So the ozone half-life is about 15 minutes. So every 15 minutes, the ozone gets cut into half. So we don't want to pump excess ozone into our system. So this is our ozone destruct unit. It actually gets collected up there. There's a little gas chamber with a stainless steel line. So all the excess ozone that we're not using gets pushed through that, and it goes to our ozone destruct. This is actually hot. This is around 90, 95 degrees. Ozone becomes unstabilized at that temperature. So as that ozone gas goes through this system, it's heating it up and it's breaking that bond instantly. So now we have regular oxygen. It's traveling through our stainless steel system, and it gets exhausted on top of the roof. So by the end of this whole process, we're converting oxygen into ozone, and then ozone back into oxygen, which is safe for people. Ozone is very corrosive. That's why it does such a good job at sanitizing our water. There is nothing that can stand ozone. It's also important that we keep up our maintenance on this system, because anything that we do to not do preventative maintenance will cause a disaster in here. If we don't clean the sieve beds, and I start getting an excess of nitrogen into my plasma blocks, the same way we're converting oxygen to ozone, we'll convert nitrogen into nitric acid. It's actually an orange plaque kind of buildup, and it'll actually start dissolving all this tubing. Once the tubing dissolves, we'll start getting ozone into our electrical components here, and it'll actually start to corrode and oxidize and break all this stuff down. So we want to be real careful that we don't have any ozone leaks. The way we prevent that is that we have ozone sniffers. So this is an ozone sniffer here. If it detects any amount of ozone, like 1 part per million, it's going to give us an audible alarm, and it will lock out the entire system until that fault gets cleared. To protect us, in case everything's built on a redundancy. So if that ozone sniffer also fails, or if the cabinets are closed and the ozone leak is happening out here, I have a secondary ozone sniffer right over here. It's right there in the corner. So that detects any amount of ozone. So this is less than 1 part per million. If it detects like 0.25 amounts of ozone, it'll give us an audible alarm right here, letting us know something's wrong. Once this alarm is set, it'll disengage the machine. There's also a bunch of safety built in. As you notice, I shut the system down with our emergency stop. That is our fail-safe. Again, if we have an ozone leak, we want to push that button immediately. I have pressure sensors here and flow meters. If we're not within our pressure range, if we're too high, we're too low, it'll cut the production of ozone. Our flow meter, if the flow isn't right, it'll cut the production of ozone. If my inverters are going through a fault, they're not producing enough power, not enough, too much, it'll cut it off. We have a moisture detector over here. So if it detects any moisture in the system, it'll cut it off. These systems are made to be redundant, so it's all safety. If something goes wrong, this system knows it needs to cut itself off immediately for our safety. Because just like the ozone oxidizes all the organics, it'll also oxidize me. And I don't want that happening. All right. And then I'm going to talk about our biotower. So just like most of our aquatic filtration, we go through, that was a chemical process. The drum filter is a mechanical process. This is a biological process. So we do have hippos producing a lot of organic waste. We do have fish producing a ton of organic waste. We want to break that down so it's safe. So the water goes in dirty on top. It has a ton of ammonia, a ton of nitrite. As it works its way through all the biomedia, all that bacteria is breaking down ammonia into nitrite, and then it's breaking down nitrite into nitrate, which is a nutrient. It's safe for fish. So all that is happening in this chamber, and then it makes its way back to hippo life support. I'm trying to think what else we got over here. And then we have the same thing on a smaller scale for the Nile croc system. So it's not as big as hippo life support, but again, we have our 2 sand filters, we have our main pumps, we have our sumps, and something different that we do for Nile croc, because we don't want our hard water leaving calcium deposits everywhere, we have an RO system right over here. And excuse the wetness, we just power wash the floors. But over here is our RO system. That's RO water. So this water, RO water stands for reverse osmosis. So in Texas, a lot of our water is super hard. We want the water to be soft, have less minerals. That's what this system does. So the system is coming from our well. It runs through this resin chamber. Now, this is actually one of the coolest things here besides ozone. The resin, it's attracted to calcium and magnesium, the stuff that makes our water hard. So all the calcium, magnesium that's in our water is getting stuck to this resin. Every day this goes through a backwash. So this container right here is full of rock salt. So when it goes through a backwash, it'll actually push water into this salt tank, it'll make a brine solution that's super salty water, and it'll flush that over our resin media. At that point, it's releasing all the calcium and magnesium and recharging itself. So then all that wastewater goes down our waistline, and we're able to go back into production of ozone, of RO water. So the next thing it's doing, it's going through a pre-filter, again, just to pick up all those extra particles that were left behind from the resin. And then it goes through our RO membrane. These are awesome. Imagine a giant toilet paper roll. The water is actually traveling in a little coil. And it's a work with me, I'm going to try to pronounce this. I have a hard time sometimes. A selectable permeable membrane. That means that it only allows select particles to go through, which is the water. Everything else is going to get trapped in the membrane and flushed out. So right now we're getting really soft water, and it's going to collect in our RO reservoir. As we need the water, there is a float switch down in the sump. If it gets low, it'll call for more water, and it will pull water from our RO reservoir. Once this system is satisfied with water, this system will go into production, making our RO and filling this up. I don't know the flow rate on this RO membrane, but I can imagine it's a few hundred gallons per minute. Or per hour. Per minute, I might be filled in a couple minutes. But yeah, and I believe this is a 3,000 gallon reservoir. So when we start this unit, it can pretty much fill this guy up by the afternoon. So if we started at 7 o'clock, by 1 o'clock, this whole thing will be topped off with clean RO water, and then we can use it for whatever purposes we need. Well, I think that's it for the life support system. If you guys have any questions. What?
Let's walk over and look at the exhibit.
Okay. All right. Whoop, whoop. Well, I believe we just did the backwash. That should be finishing about now. When we're doing our backwashes, we have to keep running back and forth. We got to make sure that we have water equalized in both our systems, because we don't want the sump running dry, and I also don't want water not going over the skimmer, or else it can't keep up. So normal operations, right between the log jam, we should see water flowing over the logs. That lets me know that the pressure in the sand filters is good, and that it's going through a good filtration process. Right where those two ducts are, there's a little island. I know I'm running low on water when that island starts to expose itself. So when that happens, we turn on the fill line and we'll fill this exhibit. It usually takes a couple hours.
Here, I'd like to know if you already went over how many gallons per day the system makes.
On which system? How much water we filter?
Sure.
All right. Let's do a little bit of math. So our pool is about 100,000 gallons. Times that by 10. So I'm really bad with math and numbers, but that's how much water we're filtering every day. Every hour we have to move. All this water eventually is going to move through the sand filter about 10 times. So imagine 100,000 gallons running 10 times through my sand filter. That's how we keep these this water looking so good. Even though Timothy tries really hard to make people be mad at me when the water's not crystal clear.
For those of you viewers asking about a tour and learning more about this, once we reopen, we do actually touch on this for the guests that participate in our additional paid HIPPO behind the scenes tour. tour where we get to chat about some of our filtration, but nothing as in-depth as Nelson is going over now.
And remember, guys, the zoo needs your help at this time. We rely 100% on memberships, guest tickets, guest spending, donations, grants. Right now, without guests, we virtually lost all of our income. So if you guys can and you guys want to support the zoo, you can always head to our website, sanantoniozoo.org. You can click on the donate button. It'll take you to the zoo's emergency fund. Any donations will be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.